I never should have entered apartment 4B, but the smell of copper pennies seeping through my ceiling had become unbearable. My name is Marcus, and until 3 weeks ago, I managed a 12-unit building in downtown Portland with the dedication of someone who actually gave a damn. The Bradford Arms wasn't much, peeling paint, radiators that clanged like prisoners rattling bars, but I kept it clean and functional. Most importantly, I minded my own business. That changed when Mrs. Chen from 4A knocked on my door at 2 in the morning, her knuckles white against her bathrobe, complaining about water damage spreading across her bathroom ceiling. The tenant above her, Mr. Holloway in 4B, hadn't answered his door in 6 days. Not unusual for him. He traveled for work, something involving agricultural consulting that took him to remote farms across the Pacific Northwest. He'd been reliable for 3 years, rent always paid via automatic transfer on the first of each month. But Mrs. Chen's ceiling told a different story, one written in brown water stains that spread like cancer cells under a microscope. I tried calling Holloway 17 times over the next 48 hours. Each call went straight to voicemail, his professional message asking callers to leave detailed information about their agricultural concerns. The smell started on the third day, faint at first, like old coins forgotten in a drawer. By day 5, it had transformed into something thick and metallic that coated the back of my throat whenever I climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. Standing outside 4B with my master key, I noticed the brass apartment numbers had oxidized green around the edges, though I'd polished them myself just last month. The hallway felt colder here, 10 degrees at least, and my breath came out in small clouds that dissipated against the door. I knocked one final time, my knuckles stinging against the wood, then slid the key into the lock. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing Holloway's pristine living room. Everything appeared normal, his collection of farming journals stacked on the coffee table, reading glasses folded neatly on top of the latest issue. The copper smell intensified, mixing with something else now, something organic and sweet like overripe fruit. My fingers went numb around the key ring, that peculiar tingling that comes before frostbite, though the apartment thermostat read 72 degrees. I called out Holloway's name, my voice cracking on the second syllable. No response. The kitchen was empty, dishes washed and stacked in the drying rack. His bedroom door stood ajar at the end of the hall, darkness visible through the gap. As I approached, the floorboards creaked under my weight in a rhythm that sounded almost like breathing. Inhale, exhale, pause. The bedroom was wrong. Not in any way I could immediately articulate, but wrong in the way your body knows before your mind catches up. Holloway's bed was made with military precision, corners tucked tight. His closet door hung open, revealing pressed shirts arranged by color. But the walls were covered in something. At first I thought it was wallpaper, an intricate pattern of loops and whorls that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. Then my eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the blinds, and I realized they were photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, overlapping like scales on a fish. All black and white, all showing the same subject from different angles and distances. They depicted what looked like holes in the ground, perfectly circular, each one perhaps 6 feet in diameter. Some photos showed the holes from above, dark circles against pale earth. Others were taken from inside, looking up at rectangles of sky. A few captured something at the bottom of the holes, something that might have been farming equipment or might have been something else entirely. My throat tightened as I noticed the dates written in pencil on the white borders. They went back decades, the oldest reading, April 1967, Tillamook County. The bathroom door was closed. A dark line of liquid had dried along the bottom edge, the source of Mrs. Chen's water damage. I pressed my palm against the door and it felt warm, almost fevered. The copper smell was overwhelming now, mixed with that sweet rot that made my stomach clench. I turned the handle. The bathtub was full, but not with water. The liquid was dark, almost black, with an oily rainbow sheen on the surface like petroleum. Holloway floated face down, his agricultural consulting suit still perfectly pressed despite being submerged. His hands gripped the edges of the tub so tightly that his knuckles had split, leaving rusty streaks on the porcelain. But that wasn't what made me stumble backward, my hip catching the sink hard enough to leave a bruise. It was the fact that he was breathing. Not with his lungs, those were surely full of whatever that liquid was. But his back rose and fell in a steady rhythm, the fabric of his suit stretching and relaxing like a second skin. Bubbles rose from somewhere beneath him, breaking the surface with soft popping sounds that reminded me of distant conversation, words just beyond comprehension. The liquid level in the tub was dropping slowly, impossibly, as if draining through Holloway himself. I reached for him, some instinct to help overriding my revulsion. My fingers had barely brushed his shoulder when his head turned, a full 180 degrees, neck twisting like an owl's. His eyes were gone, replaced by those same perfect circles I'd seen in the photographs, holes that went deeper than the anatomy of a skull should allow. He spoke without moving his lips, the words appearing in my mind like remembering a dream. He told me about the farms he visited, the consultations that were never about crops or soil. He told me about agreements made in 1967, about land that needed to be fed, about holes that were not holes but mouths, patient and eternal. He told me how each building, each city block, sat atop a network of appetites that stretched back before human memory. He told me about the necessity of volunteers, of tenants who paid their rent not in money but in something older. His grip on the tub tightened, knuckles popping like firecrackers, and the liquid level dropped another inch. The sweet relief washed over me when Holloway's head turned back around, releasing me from those impossible depths. This was clearly some kind of breakdown, a gas leak maybe, causing hallucinations. I stumbled out of the bathroom, out of the apartment, my hands shaking as I called 911 from the hallway. The operators would come, they'd find Holloway having some kind of episode, and everything would return to normal. But while I waited for the sirens, I noticed something in my jacket pocket, a small weight that hadn't been there before. I pulled out a brass key, oxidized green around the edges, with a tag that read 5B in Holloway's precise handwriting. There was no apartment 5B in the Bradford Arms. We only had 4 floors. The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes, their boots thundering up the stairs. I led them to 4B, but when we entered, the photographs were gone. The walls were bare white paint, fresh enough that I could smell the latex. The bathroom was empty, the tub dry as bone. Holloway's clothes hung in the closet, his coffee table held the same farming journals, but no trace of the man himself. The EMTs exchanged glances that suggested they were calculating whether to call the police or psychiatric services for me. They left after an hour of questions I couldn't answer. I filed a missing person report that afternoon. Holloway's sister contacted the next day. She hadn't heard from him in years, she said, not since he'd taken that consulting job. The police found nothing, of course. His bank account continued to pay rent automatically, the transfers originating from an agricultural company that existed only as a P.O. box in Tillamook County. I tried to forget about the key. For a week I almost succeeded. I handled maintenance requests, collected rent, replaced the hallway bulbs that kept burning out on the 4th floor. But at night, lying in my basement apartment, I could hear something above me. Not footsteps exactly, more like settling, like the building itself was adjusting its weight. The sound always came from directly overhead, from where apartment 5B would be if it existed. The key grew heavier in my pocket each day, its weight disproportionate to its size. I found myself climbing the stairs to the 4th floor repeatedly, counting the apartments. 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, always 4, never 5. But the ceiling above them had started to buckle slightly, a subtle sag that suggested space beyond. I measured the building's height from outside, compared it to the floor plans in my office. There were 18 feet unaccounted for. On the 10th night after Holloway's disappearance, I found myself standing in the 4th floor hallway at 3 a.m. The key was in my hand, though I didn't remember taking it out. The wall between apartments 4B and 4C had developed a hairline crack that hadn't been there that morning. As I watched, the crack widened, paint flacking away like old skin. Behind it was a door, brass numbers reading 5B in that same oxidized green. The key fit perfectly. The lock turned with a sound like breathing. Inhale, exhale, pause. The stairs beyond were narrow, wooden, definitely not up to code. They creaked that same respiratory rhythm as I climbed, my phone's flashlight barely penetrating the darkness. The air grew thicker with each step, that copper smell returning mixed with earth and something chemical, like industrial fertilizer. At the top was another door, this one modern metal, with a small window at eye level. Through the window, I could see Holloway. He stood in what looked like a greenhouse, surrounded by plants I couldn't identify, tall, pale things that grew without leaves, just thick stalks that pulsed with internal circulation. The floor was dirt but not normal soil. It moved slightly, churning like a slow sea. Holloway was feeding something into the ground, handfuls of what might have been seeds or might have been teeth. I couldn't tell in the green-tinted light. He must have sensed me watching because he turned, those circular voids where his eyes should be somehow conveying recognition. He walked to the door, placed his palm against the window. Where his hand touched, frost spread across the glass despite the humid heat I could feel radiating from within. He mouthed words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. My turn, my floor, my feeding time approaching. I ran. Down the impossible stairs, through the door that shouldn't exist, into the hallway where Mrs. Chen stood in her bathrobe, pointing at her ceiling where new water stains were spreading. But it wasn't water this time. The liquid was dark, almost black with an oily rainbow sheen. I moved out that night, abandoning everything except the clothes I was wearing. The Bradford Arms, my security deposit, my entire life in Portland, I left it all. But geography, I've learned, is meaningless to certain hungers. The key is still in my pocket, heavier now and getting heavier. Last week, I started receiving automated emails from an agricultural consulting firm, the messages containing nothing but GPS coordinates and dates. The first date is tomorrow. The worst part is the dreams, if they're dreams at all. I see myself in that greenhouse, standing where Holloway stood, my hands full of things that aren't quite seeds. I see the holes in the ground, patient and eternal, and I understand now that they're not just in Tillamook County. They're everywhere, beneath every building, every street, every carefully maintained lawn. A vast network of appetites, and we're the ones who feed them. We've always been the ones who feed them. I found a file on my laptop yesterday that I didn't create. Tenancy Agreement 5B, PDF, 4.7 megabytes, created April 15, 1967, modified every day since at 3:00 a.m. I haven't opened it, I know what it says. I know what I've already agreed to, what Holloway agreed to, what countless others have agreed to before us. The feeding must continue. The rent must be paid. Tomorrow I'll drive to the first set of coordinates. I'll find the hole that's waiting for me, the perfect circle in the earth that's been patient for so long. I'll do what needs to be done, not because I want to, but because the alternative, the building collapsing, the ground opening, the appetites going unfed, is worse. The key in my pocket feels like it weighs 50 pounds now. When I hold it up to the light, I can see through it, see the door it opens, see the stairs beyond. See myself climbing them, again and again, forever. My hands have started to smell like copper pennies. Mrs. Chen was right to complain about the water damage, but she was wrong about one thing. It's not coming from above. It's coming from below. It's always been coming from below. And tomorrow, I'll understand why we feed it, what happens if we don't, and why the brass numbers on every apartment door in every building are slowly oxidizing green. The feeding schedule is precise, the rotation exact, and my turn has come around at last. I can feel my eyes starting to itch, starting to hollow. When I look in the mirror, I swear I can see circles forming where my pupils should be. Perfect circles, patient and eternal. Tomorrow, I'll drive to those coordinates. Tomorrow, I'll begin my consultations. Tonight I just sit here typing this out, hoping someone will understand. The key grows heavier, the emails keep coming, and somewhere above me or below me I can't tell anymore. I can hear that respiratory rhythm in the walls. Inhale, exhale, pause. Inhale, exhale, pause. The building is breathing, and tomorrow I'll learn what it means to help it feed.
I need to tell someone about this. I've been sitting on it for almost 2 years now, and I can't keep pretending it didn't happen. Look, I'm not someone who believes in this stuff. I wasn't raised religious, I don't follow astrology, and I've never been to a psychic. But something happened to me in the winter of 2023 that I can't explain. And the worst part? I think it's still happening. I don't know if telling this story will help or make it worse, but I need to get it out there. Maybe someone else has experienced this. Maybe I'm not losing my mind. So, a bit about me. I'm 29. I work in IT support for a medical billing company. Nothing glamorous. I sit in a cubicle, answer tickets, walk people through password resets. The pay is okay, and the benefits are decent, which is why I've stayed for 4 years. In early 2023, I was living in this converted garage apartment in the suburbs outside of Portland. The rent was cheap, which was the main appeal. My landlord was this older guy who lived in the main house. He mostly left me alone. The place was small, maybe 400 square feet total, but it had its own entrance and a little kitchenette. Good enough for me. The building was old, probably built in the 70s. The walls were thin, the water pressure sucked, and the heating barely worked. But I could afford it on my own, which mattered to me after my last roommate situation went south. I worked second shift back then, 3 in the afternoon to midnight. I'd get home around 12:30, eat something, watch YouTube or play games until I got tired, then crash around 3 or 4 in the morning. Not a healthy routine, but it worked for my schedule. That's the setup. Nothing special. Just a regular person living a pretty boring life. But sometime around late January, things started feeling off. Nothing I could point to at first. Just this low-level unease, like when you forget to lock your car and spend all day wondering if you did. I'd come home at night and feel like the apartment was different somehow. Not visibly different. Just off. Like someone had been there while I was gone, even though nothing was missing or moved. I started checking the locks obsessively. Front door, windows, everything. All secure. I figured I was just tired. Working late shifts messes with your head. The first real incident happened on a Tuesday night in early February. I got home a little after midnight. It had been raining all evening, one of those cold, miserable Oregon rains that soaks through everything. I was tired and just wanted to heat up some leftover pizza and zone out. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, I immediately noticed the smell. Damp earth. Like wet soil or mulch. It was strong enough that I actually stopped in the doorway and looked around, thinking maybe there was a leak or something. But everything looked normal. I checked under the sink, around the windows, even opened the little closet where the water heater was. Nothing. No leaks, no mold, no obvious source. The smell faded after about 10 minutes, so I convinced myself it was just the rain outside seeping in somehow. 2 days later, it happened again. Same smell, same time of night. This time it was concentrated near the back corner of the room, where my bed was. I got down on my hands and knees, sniffing like an idiot, trying to find the source. Nothing. The carpet was dry. The walls were fine. I texted my landlord about it. He came by the next day, poked around for a few minutes, and said he didn't smell anything. He suggested I was probably smelling the compost bins from the house next door. I didn't argue, but I knew that wasn't it. This smell was inside. Around that same time, I started hearing things. Small things at first. scratching sounds in the walls, which I assumed were mice or rats. I mentioned it to my landlord, and he said he'd put out traps, but I never saw any. Then I started hearing footsteps above me. Which didn't make sense because there was no second floor. Just a flat roof with maybe 2 feet of crawl space for insulation and wiring. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth. They'd start around 2 or 3 in the morning and go on for maybe half an hour. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was the house settling, or branches scraping the roof, or my upstairs neighbors in the main house even though they were on the opposite side of the property. But deep down, I knew it didn't sound like any of those things. It sounded like footsteps. One night in mid-February, I decided to confront it. I was lying in bed, listening to the pacing above me, and I just snapped. I stood up on my bed and pounded on the ceiling with my fist. "Hey! Knock it off!" The footsteps stopped immediately. Total silence. I waited, feeling stupid and a little scared. Nothing happened. I got back into bed and tried to sleep. About an hour later, I heard 3 loud knocks. From directly above where my head was resting on the pillow. Knock. 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 I froze. My heart was slamming in my chest. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just listened. Nothing else happened that night. But I barely slept. The next day at work, I was a zombie. I kept zoning out during calls, making stupid mistakes. My supervisor asked if I was feeling okay. I lied and said I was fighting off a cold. That evening, before my shift, I stopped at a hardware store and bought a cheap motion-activated camera. The kind people use for home security. I set it up in my apartment, pointed at the main living area, and connected it to my phone. I figured if something was getting in while I was at work, I'd catch it on camera. Nothing showed up for 3 days. Just me coming and going, my cat wandering around. Normal stuff. But on the 4th night, something happened. I got an alert on my phone around 9 p.m. while I was at work. Motion detected. I pulled up the feed. The camera showed my empty apartment. Nothing moving. But then, slowly, the camera angle started to shift. Like someone was picking it up and turning it. The view tilted, swung around, and then faced the wall. Then the feed cut out. When I got home that night, the camera was on the floor, halfway across the room from where I'd set it up. The lens was pointed at the baseboard. I checked the footage again. The timestamp showed the incident happening at exactly 9:04 p.m. I don't mind admitting I was scared at that point. I called my friend Derek, told him what had been happening. He suggested carbon monoxide poisoning. Said it can cause hallucinations and paranoia. I bought a detector the next day. It read 0. Things escalated after that. The smell of damp earth became a nightly occurrence. The footsteps grew louder and more frequent. I'd hear them during the day now, even when I was awake and moving around. And I started seeing things in my peripheral vision. Quick movements, like someone ducking behind furniture or slipping into the bathroom. Every time I turned to look directly, nothing was there. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking. But I was sober, I wasn't on any medications, and I've never had mental health issues. One night in early March, I woke up to find my bedroom door open. I always slept with it closed. Always. My cat was sitting in the doorway, staring into the dark living area, her tail puffed up. I got out of bed and turned on the lights. Everything looked normal, but my cat wouldn't move. She just kept staring at the corner near the kitchenette, growling low in her throat. I followed her gaze. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed the shadows. The way they fell didn't match the light sources. There was a dark patch in the corner that seemed too deep, too black. And it was moving. Not quickly, but slowly shifting, like something breathing. I grabbed my cat and locked us both in the bathroom. I sat on the floor with her until sunrise, listening to slow, dragging footsteps moving around my apartment. When light started coming through the bathroom window, everything went quiet. I opened the door. The apartment was empty. Normal. Like nothing had happened. I called in sick to work and started looking for a new place that same morning. But here's the thing. I couldn't afford to move immediately. I needed first and last month's rent, security deposit, moving costs. I was broke. I had to stay at least another month, maybe 2. Those next few weeks were hell. Whatever was in that apartment with me stopped being subtle. I'd come home to find furniture moved. The faucet running even though I knew I'd turned it off. My clothes pulled out of drawers and scattered on the floor. The smell of damp earth was constant now, so strong it made me nauseous. And I started having dreams. The same one, every night. I was standing in a dense forest at night. The ground was wet and muddy. I could hear something moving through the trees, circling me, getting closer. I'd wake up gasping, covered in sweat, with dirt under my fingernails. Actual dirt. Caked under my nails and in the creases of my hands. I have no explanation for that. Finally, in late March, I had enough money saved. I gave my landlord notice and moved into a friend's spare room across town. I didn't tell him why I was leaving early. Just said I needed a change. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But it wasn't. I've been in my new place for almost 2 years now. It's a normal apartment in a normal building. Well lit, good neighbors, no weird smells or sounds. Except sometimes, late at night, I still hear the footsteps. Soft and distant, like they're coming from very far away. And every so often, I catch that smell. Damp earth. Just for a second, then it's gone. Last month, I had the dream again for the first time in over a year. Standing in that dark forest, something circling me in the trees. When I woke up, there was dirt under my nails. I don't know what was in that garage apartment. I don't know if it was something that lived there, or something I brought back from somewhere, or something that just found me. But I don't think it let go. I think it's still with me, somehow. Quiet most of the time, but still there. I've stopped telling people about it. They either think I'm crazy or they try to rationalize it away. But I know what I experienced. And I know it's not over. If you're listening to this and you've had something similar happen, I don't know what to tell you. I haven't found a way to make it stop. All I can do is keep moving forward and try not to think about it too much. But sometimes, late at night when the apartment is quiet, I wonder what would happen if I turned around fast enough. If I'd finally see what's been following me. I'm not sure I want to know.